Luke's, you're not going to like this. Jen? Hey, Jen and the Luke's, that back table back there, you got to move a little closer because today is that kind of a day. We all have to, everybody in the back, move toward the front. We want to be close today. And Heather, you got to sit down.
Christ be all around me, yeah.
And Michael, when you do come back, you're good. Look at you all moving close. So Denise, you got to sit close. Today is a sit close kind of day. Okay, hey Jen, could you be the messenger when people start coming in tardy? Tell them they need to sit up close. All right, so you all have to sit close. This is a sit close kind of day. So just squeeze on up here. So good morning. Welcome to Common Thread. Welcome to a special kind of day today. We're going to have a special ceremony in a moment, and also it's Mother's Day. And if you're a mother, we emphasize today, as we will a few weeks from now on Father's Day, that what you do profoundly impacts us and our future and impacts our society because we all are shaping the raw material of our young souls that shape the world that we live in. So first of all, a thank you today. Second, keep up the good work. What you do, very important, and what you do can wear you out. And so you know how beautiful it is, but we all know that there is sacrifice and fatigue involved. So today, here, gratitude. Because if you're like most parents, you feel some component of failure. So today, let's join with one another and let's celebrate together the times that go well. And let's make sure that we help each other get up and brush ourselves off on the days that don't go well. Keep up the good work. So again, welcome to Common Thread. Special welcome for those of you who are tuning in. If you're a newcomer, we'd like to, in a low-pressure way, welcome you. We created a welcome email. You can see it there on the screen. If you go to our website /newcomer, we will send you an email. And in the email, there will be some stuff for you to read. And then at the end, there'll be an invitation to get to know some people in the community. Also, one of the hallmarks of healthy community, we say each week, is that we stand with one another on our rough days. And it turns out we have got a bunch of nice people in our community who have discovered an aptitude for standing with us on our rough days. For many, they got that aptitude because they have been stood with on their rough days. So we hope you'll push against our society's resistance to that whole standing with dynamic. You can use the QR code, you can thumb type it, or really what you could just do is go to the back table because they have made it as easy as can be. They've got a name tag. There'll be a name tag that says, hey, I would love to stand with. Let's see, here is what we talk about each week. When you look at the announcements, here's what you're looking at. You're looking at practical ways in which we work the circle together. And you can see what's coming up, ways that we do the communal, the contemplative, the learning, and the serving quadrant. We've got What Are You Thinking? Right afterwards on Zoom, a drop-in Enneagram group coming up next week. Volunteer at the men's shelter later in the day next week. A virtual book study, I'll talk about that in a moment. And Braver Angels is doing a depolarizing within workshop. I think, I can't see the date, but it's up there. And that's going to be really important because we're coming up on the 2024 and it's going to go crazy. And if this is about how do we do the work of depolarizing within, you'll hear more about that next week. And then it looks like there's an artsy group coming up for their regular meetings. So this is the book club I mentioned. If you haven't read this book, or if you haven't read it in the last 2 years, I would encourage you to participate in this book club. It was transformative of my life and my understanding of how I relate in the world, and I think it has helped shape how we do our community. It will shape how you do your relationships in life, so I would encourage you when you hear the details, or you can look up the details to participate in that. All right, let's say, as we do each week, if you are here, you belong. Well done. I guess it does help, Jen, to have it up on the wall. It really does. We are, every one of us, carriers of the inner light.
We are, every one of us, carriers of the inner light.
And we are, every one of us, carriers of divine breath.
We are, every one of us, carriers of divine breath.
Okay, the special part. This is the first of a two-part ceremony. Today, we're going to take the first step toward ordaining Heather and Sue. Now, before we begin, I got to make sure some things. Heather and Sue, are you in place? Yes, you're in place. Board members, we got 1, 2, we got 3 are in place. All right. Lindsay, you can come and get ready. She's in place. All right. Maria, you got the chime ready? Let's give it a practice chime. This one doesn't count. Okay. All right. We're ready. All the stuff is ready for us to begin, but we're not going to begin yet. Heather and Sue, you got to settle in. We're going to say things about you. And when Angie stands up, it's probably going to make you feel really uncomfortable, and that's going to make me happy. But before we do that, this isn't the ceremony. Before we do the ceremony, some context, as we often do. Let's talk about ceremonies in general. Let's talk about rituals. These moments mark times in our lives. They help us do a lot of things. They help us see meaning and purpose. They help us build connection with one another, with the community. They channel our emotions sometimes. Sometimes they channel sorrow, rituals do. Sometimes they channel joy. Sometimes they channel pride. And they help us feel connected to the divine, help us feel connected to the community, help us feel connected to one another. So rituals matter. Second, you know, our community has been on a long journey of deconstructing and reconstructing our religion. And along with that, we have been deconstructing and reconstructing our rituals, which is, turns out, a learn-as-you-go process. After our Welcome Our Babies ritual a few weeks back, we went back afterwards and said, I think we missed a few opportunities. I think we could have added more meaning if we'd done it this way. Well, that's how it goes when you're reconstructing and deconstructing and reconstructing. Lots of trialing and erroring, and today is that, except we do our children milestones rituals once a year. Lots of opportunity for trialing and erroring. But ordaining folks, this is only our third time. So today is the first part of the ceremony, and we're hoping we get it right. Because we, the community, are going to make pledges today to Heather and to Sue, and a year from now, Sue and Heather will then make pledges to us. Our first 2 times that we did this, we never got to the second ceremony, which is exactly what was supposed to happen because there's a reason why we separate the first and the second by a year. It's to give the candidates and to give the community time to assess, is this the life for Heather and for Sue? Now, we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be doing this today if we didn't already think there's a pretty good chance the answer is going to be yes, but the process isn't finished until they have done the interior decision process making by test driving the role and asking, is this the life for me? When I was doing this, when I was just getting started on this, I had an old minister say to me, if there's another life that you could do and be happy, you should do that. Because, he said, if this is not the life for you, it will crush you. But if it is the life for you, there will be nothing that you can find that will be more fulfilling. And here's the thing, the old guy was right. This was the life for me. This has become my life, and nothing that I could have done could give me the fulfillment that this has given me. But had that not been true, this thing, oh yeah, it would crush you. This thing could crush you. So a year from now, if Heather and Sue opt not to have the second ceremony, we will not regret that. We will celebrate that we will honor a decision that was well made, a decision that was carefully considered. And let's be really honest, a little bit that's not true, because I know both of them. I will celebrate the decision if they opt not to live this life. But part of me really hopes they do. So that's the preamble. Are you ready to begin? Yes. All right. Here's how you're going to know we're starting. Maria, hit it. We are now starting. Lindsay.
As I rise, strength of God, go before, lift me up. As I wake, eyes of God, look upon, be my side. Satisfy and sustain as I hear voice of God. Lead me on, be my guide, be my guide above and below me, before and behind me. In every eye that sees me, Christ be all around me, above and below me, before and behind me. In every eye that sees me, Christ be all around me, yeah. As I go, hand of God, my defense by my side, and as I rest, breath of God, fall upon, bring me peace, bring peace through me, above and below me, before and behind me. In every eye that sees me, Christ be all around me, above and below me, before and behind me. In every eye that sees me, Christ be all around me, yeah. Christ be all around me, yeah. Christ be all around me,
It's okay to clap. So today, we mark the entry into a life of service to, a life of care for our spiritual community by Susan Paige Kemple and Heather Lee Luden. Today, we make pledges in ritual form that apply to them, but really apply to all of us. So I invite you to listen carefully to the words that we say together today. They're informed by ancient wisdom, by ancient practice. For centuries, for millennia, communities like ours have made these commitments one to another and have found, when we do, health and well-being. So I'm glad you are here to celebrate this ritual together. So Cherie, please come up and read our scripture.
Good morning. So our scripture reading is a paraphrase of Romans 12, 1 and 2. My friends, once we take up the spiritual life, there is a call upon us to serve something bigger than ourselves. It is to us to repair our world, bring God light to darkness, God life to folks dying a little bit each day. To do that, we must be able to do that. We must be able to draw from a deeper source, see a bigger truth. We can't just do what everybody does, think what everybody thinks. Do that, and our instincts will be the same as everybody else's. That won't help anybody. So let's do the work of inner transformation. Let's do the work of renewing our minds. Let's bring our best selves to the job before us.
Drew?
All of us are called to be ministers. All of us are called to serve our world, build our world, and redeem the broken parts of our world. A few of us focus our service on the spiritual community. A few of us focus on creating the space where we all gather to be strengthened in our roles in the world. We are here today because we believe Heather Luden and Sue Kemple are two of those, called to serve the health and well-being of the Christian church. Today, we grant Sue and Heather a one-year license to practice ministry, a year to test drive the role, see if it is a lifetime fit. It is a year for both the candidate and the community to discern together the suitability of the role and the shape that it may take. Indications are this role fits both of them. They have both spoken of the inner voice nudging them this way. We've had time to observe them both in a number of contexts, to observe the trajectory of their lives. Consequently, the board and staff of Common Thread recommend them to become licensed ministers in our community. We hope a year from now to perform a second ritual together. We hope to lay hands on Heather and Sue and affirm what we currently suspect, that theirs will be lives of service in the Christian church and hopefully ours.
We have found Heather's and Sue's character and temperament to be a fit for a lifetime of church ministry. Sue is kind. She is compassionate and caring, big-hearted and authentic. She has demonstrated deep care for people, for us. Heather is uplifting. She draws effortlessly from her extensive study and experience. And when she does, she lifts people up. She lifts us up. Heather is compassionate. When she speaks, we hear love. Sue is authentic. When she speaks, we hear honest truth. Sue is wisdom and grace. Heather is generosity and wisdom. Sue is wisdom and grace. Heather is wisdom and generosity. Heather is dedicated to lifelong learning. Sue is dedicated to deep and abiding spirituality. Both Sue and Heather have a superpower: to remain calm in the middle of a storm. So again, without reservation and with great joy, our board and staff recommend Sue and Heather to be licensed ministers in our church. And I feel like we're supposed to hit the gong, is that right?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. It wasn't on the script, I was just feeling like a gong needed to be hit. But maybe next time we do this ritual, we'll revisit the ringing of the gong at that moment.
It didn't occur to me that I put their part in the notes. Sorry, I have to forward fast a little bit to my part. Yeah, when we revisit the ceremony, let's fix this part. All right, so Heather and Sue, you come up here and stand beside me now for this part. And community, let us stand up together. And this is the part, not yet, but when we start reading, yeah, that's right over here. That was very good. No, right beside me. This is the part where when it's time, you're going to extend your hand toward Heather and toward Sue. So Sue and Heather, during this year, we, the Common Thread community, we make these commitments to you. So first, there we go. We will support you. Let's read this part together. We will stand with you. Sorry, wrong button. That we got right? Yeah, okay. We will stand with you in this discernment process. We will help promote and throw our weight behind you. Whenever we can, we will help you build our community, respond. We will help. We will hold you in our hearts before the divine. Taking seriously this year of discernment, we will stand with you as you seek insight, wisdom, and a clarified sense of the life before you. We will learn with you. As you are learning about your role, we will learn with you. We will share with you what we discern and listen carefully to what you do. We will encourage you. We will look for opportunities to affirm you and express gratitude for you. We will endeavor to uplift you and stir you forward to love and good deeds. You may be seated. All right, now if the two of you would go right there and stand facing me. A little closer. And a little closer to each other. There you go. All right, so here are our expectations of you. We expect you to listen for the inner voice, especially as it pertains to this life of service. We expect you to learn and be learning to love us well, even when we're pissy and difficult. But we not just us, we expect you to be figuring out the art of loving people, especially the tough ones. We expect you to be lifelong learners, to always be learning the ancient wisdom and to always be learning contemporary wisdom. And we expect you to practice quietness, to take seriously the contemplative spiritual disciplines. And you might have noticed in that, we really expect you to be working the circle. And we expect you to live lives of virtue and goodness. So hearing that, you want the license? Okay. I swore I had these really nice containers up in my closet for these, and I went to find it, so sorry, all you get is a manila folder. So Heather, hold that, and hold that. And on behalf of this community, Common Thread, we authorize you both to serve as ministers in the Christian church, and we gather to say these words that we say today because we believe you will fulfill that role, that destiny. So, let us pray. Indwelling Divine, we are grateful for Sue and for Heather, and we make these commitments to them before the Divine, committing ourselves to stand with them as they prepare for lives of service. May they be blessed. May they be a blessing. Amen. And don't applaud yet. Marie, now. Now you can applaud. All right, stand there. Now, four final things before we go. First, that is a real life license. I mean, it's like official. You can use it for tax purposes and everything. Second, hold on, a gift basket for each of you. Look at this. Third, wait a minute, a hug now. You got to have one hug. And fourth, lots of hugs later because afterwards we're going to have snacks in the back. One more applause. Give them a hand. Here we go. Now you may be seated. All right, we've done a ceremony. Let's begin our lesson, but before we do that, if you would take your camera out and point it at the QR code. There's a few new things in housekeeping this week. The first one is this. I've been gathering interest for a long time about, I want to talk about money group. And then I went to that file where I put all those names. Oh my Lord, I've deleted it and I can't find it. I have looked everywhere. So would you please, even though you have already checked that box, would you check that box if you're interested in, I'd like to talk about money group. Also, we need to install a door with a window downstairs in the nursery, because the safety policy being what it is, we cannot have a single adult in a room with a door closed with children. So that being the case, we're either going to have to get two adults in that room every week, which thank you all for your gracious volunteering, but oh my Lord, how are we going to do that? Or we're going to get a really big window in the door. So if you know how to put windows in a door, if you could click that box, and still there from the last few weeks thinking about raising boys together, depolarizing within, and helping us find songs that the community can sing, someone who you know that would be fun to work with our teens, anything you see there that you could do to help the community, go ahead and click that box. All right. So the title of our current lesson is Letting Go. We started it reviewing the distinction between spirituality and religion. Spirituality is inner experience, we saw. Religion is structure to help us toward deeper spiritual experience. Scaffolding, that was one term that I used. Curriculum, that was another. Religion is practical tools to help us rise above evolution brain. It is practices, and it is schedules, and it is people like what we've ordained or licensed and are on our way to ordaining Heather and Sue to do. Support systems to help us tame our evolutionary neurons, help us do the time-tested things that will help us emerge into our higher selves. Also, we have discussed at length on many occasions the historical moment through which we are living, shifting from one way of being a society to another way of being a society. And the same is happening in our religion. We are updating the scaffolding, updating the curriculum. We're going through this deconstructing, reconstructing process that you heard me mention earlier. Now, a beautiful thing that happens in the way that history emerges, if you stand back far enough, as painful as big change feels, History, historically, keeps offering us a version of better. The process often gets ugly, change does. The process often doesn't feel better, but again, stand back far enough, and again and again and again, history is offering us better. The better that history is offering religion right now is a new way. It's actually very, very old. We just haven't used it in about 500 years, to a new way to deepen our spiritual lives. So in the last 500-year way of being Christian, of being Western, really, it was kind of rare to move into those later stages of spirituality that we mentioned a few weeks ago. But what history is inviting us to right now is to reconfigure the curriculum, to reconfigure the scaffolding so that it begins to be unrare, to become commonplace for people to work their way through to the everything connected stages of spirituality. So, right now, across the planet, we are relearning a lot of ancient wisdom. We are rediscovering a lot of components of the curriculum. And importantly, we are rediscovering our letting go curriculum. It's a time of change. Change is difficult. Things will be different on the other side, but if we do our part, the different will be better. Our religion on the other side of the last Reformation, 500 years ago, was unrecognizable to the people before it. That's the time that we're living in right now. What emerges after this time will be unrecognizable because we are up to our ears in rediscovering and reimagining and restoring. And eventually, everything is connected. Spirituality will not be rare. So, letting go is part of that reconfigured curriculum. Now, this is the last week of the introductory section of the lesson, just a little bit more context today, and then we'll begin to look at the practical parts next week. I sent this image out in the email on Thursday, and I said, find the dinosaur, it's in there, and several people wrote back and says, damn it, it is not. Several told me there's no dinosaur, I know how to do these things, and there is no dinosaur, Doug, which wasn't my plan, but it did kind of work out the way that because here's what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about it is not hard, but it is very hard to see differently. So, hey, what a great metaphor. You couldn't see it. But you're better, Lindsay. Here's the thing about stereograms. It is not hard to see the dinosaur once you see the dinosaur. Usually when you see it, it's kind of a head slap moment. Oh, that's how you got to hold your eyes. Oh, that's the thing you've got to do. However, getting from not seeing to seeing, getting to a different way of seeing, yeah, that is difficult. So again, look at this, a perfect metaphor. Next, when we do the practical tool part of the lesson, we'll be talking about letting go of very tangible, practical things, small things. But when we do, it won't be about the things. It'll be about how we see. The practice of letting go of some of the things is actually a practice in changing how we see it, a practice in helping us see differently. We want to see a bigger picture about ourselves. We want to see more than just what our evolutionary brains kick up in our heads. We are not just our ego selves. There is something more. We are those things. You are an ego self, you are an evolutionary brain, but we are that in the same way that the Grand Canyon is a whole. Okay, it is, but that kind of misses the point. It is more than that. Letting go practices help us see the more than that is embedded in the reality we live in and embedded in this thing we call me. Those practices will help us see what we affirm every week, that we are, every one of us, carriers of the indwelling divine. So here's a cheat. Maybe that's going to help you see the dinosaur. However, I do not think it's going to. I stared at this one a long time. Now, I have used this metaphor in enough lessons through my years as a minister. I have learned how to see stereograms. I know how to do it. I know how to configure my eyes, and I looked at this thing for a long time. I could not see the stupid dinosaur, and I had the cheat. Now, the site said something about how if you zoom the image, you might make, by cutting and pasting it a little harder. I don't know what happened. But anyway, Heather obviously also had some problems seeing the dinosaur, and she sent me a note. And she said, yeah, I guess I don't have an authentic self, so I'm just going to go with my inauthentic self. So she added her own dinosaur. I belly laughed when I saw that one. Now, in the past, the times that I was able to see the image, it was because I figured out how to hold my eyes. I learned to focus behind the image, actually to find a focal point as far behind the image as my eyes were in front of the image, and then kind of blur them a little bit. And sure enough, with a little bit of eye crossing, out pops the image. Or I learned to get up so close to the image that my eyes couldn't possibly focus, and then keep my eyes in that posture, and then slowly move back from the thing. And sure enough, if you do that, a flower, or the planet Saturn, or some such thing. And when that happens, when you see it, it was there all the time. All I had to do was just look differently. Because it turns out seeing the stereogram is not difficult. Getting ourselves to see the stereogram, okay, that part is difficult. Challenging the neural pathways in our head that are pretty much set around a set of habits of seeing and perceiving a certain way, yeah, that part's difficult. Letting go of our ingrained seeing habits, yeah, that part is difficult. So again, thank you, religion, a practical curriculum to help us see differently. Here's what you got to do. You put your nose up there and then you do this. Here's what you got to do. You got to focus behind. Here's what you do. We do the things that religion has given us as a curriculum, and quite often out pops, the divine center that we all carry. Oh, that's what you're talking about. Of course, it was there all along. Now, keep going down and that, whoa, wait. Are you saying, yes, the divine center is also in you? Well, you know what? Sure enough, all along. Again, it's not hard to see once you see. It's been there all along. We say it every week. Every one of us carries the indwelling divine. But when we see it, it's a fundamentally different experience. Okay. Or maybe we see, the world is beautiful. Despite all of that stuff that I see, despite the negativity bias that we all carry in our brains, the saints and sages have been saying it all along, but one day we see it. And then we think, how did I miss that? Everything belongs. All around the spiritual tradition, you hear that all the time, but then one day, how did I not see that? It's been there all along, always been there, and then we see it. And that process of seeing what we typically don't see, that is essential for moving forward in the spiritual life. It is essential for deeper and further in. So, religion's curriculum comes along and says, here's how you do it. Here's how you see differently. Here's how. Here's how you, in a spiritual way, cross your eyes, blur your depth of vision. Here's how you do it. I ran into this guy, Anthony DeMello. I ran into that pocket-sized little book, The Way to Love, early in my spiritual life, and I found it about the time that I was transitioning from the religion of my childhood that was very traditional American Christianity to what you now see us doing, rethinking our story, rethinking our practices, having our own reformation. He's from India, and he's a Jesuit priest, and he's a psychotherapist, and I read everything this man wrote. But I think the thing that helped me most was this little book. I've probably read it 10 times because it is pocket-sized. It really, I'm serious, it'll fit in the pocket. And because each chapter, and conveniently there are 30 of them, so you can read one chapter each day. Each chapter is only about 3 pages long, so I would read one a night, every night for a month, just before going to sleep. And then I would marinate on it through the night. And that slow format helped me integrate into my life stuff that I told you about on Easter. I had been reading our tradition's mystics for a long time, but this little book helped me take all that they said and internalize it and help me take that wisdom and get it from my head into my life. So, I knew about mindfulness practice. I'd actually practiced mindfulness practice, but what DeMello did was help me want to do mindfulness practice, help me make it a priority. DeMello is why I organize those morning Zooms where we get together and meditate in the morning, because I want to be steady in my practice. And I know I will be steady in my practice if I know you're waiting for me at 6:30 in the morning. DeMello helped me understand, well, what do you know about that? It turns out that it's not just Christians whose religious curriculum will carry them through this process to everything connected spirituality. Because he grew up in a very Hindu context, he could see the wisdom of that tradition as well. Now, I'd grown up with a sense that that was against the rules, but he helped me see past the filter that my religion had put on me. Now, not very many words, but read them every night and percolate on them through the night hours and do that for a month. What DeMello was doing was helping me fuzzy up my field of vision. What DeMello was doing was helping me see the dinosaur. Often, what would happen during those months that I would be reading, oh, I see. What I hadn't seen, oh, I see. One of those times, a line in the book that I still remember this many years later, he said this: "We see persons not as they are, we see persons as we are." We see persons not as they are, we see persons as we are. When we are locked into our way of seeing, we only see people through the lens of our focal distance. We only see people through the lens of our beliefs. I believe this about you. I believe this about people. I believe this about circumstances. I believe this about stimulus and response. I believe that when you are stimulated that way, you will respond this way. I believe this about the way things are in reality. And so consequently, that's what I see. That's where I focus. We can't help that. We wake up in this world with brains that generate fears. And we wake up in this world with brains that generate strategies to mitigate those fears. And we wake up in brains that attach to those fears and then attach to those strategies that mitigate those fears, and we start to hold them with a death grip. It's just the way our brains do stuff. And that dynamic will blind us. That dynamic will create great big blind spots, and we will go through our lives unable to see the dinosaur. And one of the primary things we do not see is, I am. You are divine light. Oh, life is beautiful. Everything does belong. Our fears and our attachments and our strategies, they get in there and they determine where we focus. And so they determine what we notice, and they determine what we block out and don't notice. And that determines where our work goes and where our energies go and where our focus goes and our thoughts and our decision making and our priority setting. The lives we create are determined by what we see or what we fail to see. And with the brains doing that full time, we can't help but miss the dinosaur. We can't help but miss the greater reality. So I hope you can see by now why letting go is such an essential part of the spiritual curriculum, the religious curriculum. So if we want a deeper life, if we want a better life, if we want wholeness, if we want well-being, if we want the fruit of the Spirit, love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and so forth. Step one is going to be seeing differently. But as we said in the first week of this context-setting part of the lesson, seeing differently is not our default setting. To see differently, we have to break up deeply established patterns. The more we live in, the more we live with our distorted vision, the more we see through the lens of our fears and our attachments and our strategies, the more convinced that we become, this is reality. This is what real is. So once you are persuaded that this is reality, this is what real is, who in their right mind would even consider letting go? How would I let go of the one and true truth about all things real? So we keep on. We keep on directing our focus. We keep on directing our energy. We keep on making our decisions. We keep on setting our priorities. And we keep on living in a world in which there is no dinosaur. And in that world, we can't see how that person, the one who hurt me, is a carrier of the inner light. Can't see it. We can't see I am the carrier of the inner light. Just can't see it. I'm looking and looking, Doug. You say there's a dinosaur there. I don't think there's a dinosaur there. Most of the time, we are dead convinced that we are living in and interacting with the real world. And all the while, the dinosaur is right there. All the while, everything is connected, is right there. Carriers of the inner light, every one of us, right there. That's what fears and attachments and strategies do. They determine what we see, and they determine the world that, having seen that we go about creating. So, to move deeper into the spiritual life, we need a new, actually again, it's really quite old, curriculum. We need a curriculum that will help us drop one way of seeing, help us fuzzy up our focus, change our depth of perception, and emerge into another way of seeing. And as I have been saying, thank you, religion, because you have given us that. That's what the letting go practices are. Quite ancient. The letting go practices are a way of helping us see what we fail to see. They help us stumble into a different way of perceiving. Well, what do you know? Carrier of the inner divine, that changes things. How did I miss that? Well, here's where the stereogram metaphor breaks down a little bit. If you do go home and you do try and look at the dinosaur, when you see it, you're going to see it in an instant. You're going to see the dinosaur, or if you choose an easier one, you will see the flower, and it usually happens right there in a moment. You didn't see it, and then bam, you see it. And sometimes in the spiritual life, that is how it goes. Sometimes you have epiphanies. Certainly, we're not going to say epiphanies don't happen. They do. But most of the time, it's a much more gradual process. Most of the time, it's a much more incremental process. Most of the time, we oscillate. We see until not seeing crowds out what we saw. And then we see again, but this time it takes a little longer before not seeing crowds out what we begin to see. And then that oscillating process does tend to move forward, kind of like the tide and the waves. The waves go in and out, but the tide kind of comes in. It's a much more incremental, iterative process. And that process, that moving forward and back, but moving forward, the Buddhists call that enlightenment. By that they mean extinguishing over time, or the actual word is blowing out like a candle. Blowing out the old way of seeing, the old way of being. Slowly coming to see reality more clearly. Less filtered through our compulsive desires. Less constrained by our compulsive attachments and our fears and our strategies. Slowly coming to see, everything is connected. Slowly coming to see, I am. Once freed of my compulsions, I am compassion. I don't do compassion. I am compassion. I am contentment. I am peace. That's kind of how the Buddhists think about it. But as Christians, we talk about the same dynamic. We use different language. We use the term still small voice. If we will quiet the incessant noisiness of those fears and attachments and strategies, if we will quiet our interior driving compulsions, if we will quiet the insistence that we see the world through those attachments and fears, if we will quiet all that noise, sure enough, there is another voice in there. It's a still one, a quiet one, a small one. Start to quiet the external noise, which is why we do the contemplative practices. And we start to experience what Jesus called having eyes that see or having ears that hear. We have eyes that see the deeper reality. We have ears that hear the deeper truth. Now, our tradition has long held, all of our saints and sages, that discerning the divine, seeing the dinosaur, is less about these grand, big drama, signs, or phenomenon. Sometimes that happens, but more often it's a very mundane, over a long period of time, sponsored by the community, supported by our friends, moving forward incrementally in a very undramatic way. And part of that is we just learn how to be still. We learn how to be quiet. And we learn to adopt a posture of deep listening. And then one day we think, oh, that's been there for a while. That's been there all the time. And with that, we are now ready for next week. Because next week, when we start talking about the spiritual practices, we're going to realize that's what the practices do. They slow us down. They build into our lives this slow, iterative process that eventually culminate in one day us looking up and saying, oh, how did I not see that? Oh, how did I miss that? These practices will help us see the dinosaur, help us see our divine centers, help us see one another's divine centers, see how everything is connected, and see that everything is made of the same stuff that God is made of. So, indwelling divine, may we be seers of the deeper. May we become practitioners of the curriculum of seeing, the curriculum of letting go. Amen. That's the part where you're supposed to say amen too. Amen. All right. We're going to do things a little bit differently after the lesson today, but here's the thing that the board would like us to do. Catch up if we are behind. Last week, our board approved me eventually coming to you and talking about a potential possibility, an opportunity out before us. We're going to try and raise some money going forward in the future, but we're not going to do that yet. Okay, you got to quit talking to me. Right now, what we need to do is just a little bit more catching up, because we spent more than we thought we would spend moving in. We've done all the expensive stuff. We've still got some stuff we've got to do. We've got to get some lighting, but the things that are coming up are not going to be as expensive. But what we do have is some leftover bills. So let's catch up. And then as we move later in the year, I want to talk to you about an opportunity that is before us as a community. Remember what I say all the time. When we invest in community, our love, time, energy, dollars, we get it back. We get it back amplified. What happens in us by being participants in spiritual community is one of the most transformative contexts in which we could be. It's worth the money and the time and the love and the energy and the C word, the commitment that we make to one another. So we always give online. Let's do that. Now, online folks, we are going to be doing something a little different today. Let me see. Yeah, we're going to do that in a minute. So online folks, we're going to do something a little different in the room today, but online you can be talking about the lesson. You can just go on and take care of that. Let's put our hands on our hearts. Oh, by the way, to get there, go to the front page of our website or the notes right there in the YouTube link and click that, and then if it asks you for a password, 1417. 1417. If you would put your hand on your heart, let's remember that every one of us carries the indwelling divine. And let's extend our hand to the city. Let's look for opportunities to share the divine in us with the people we live and work and go to school with. Amen. God bless you all. You were dismissed. Those of us here, we're going to do something a little different today, and that's because we've got an obligation to fulfill as being part of One Wake. Here's what One Wake